I am seeing Spider-Man No Way Home in cinemas tomorrow, December 15th, opening day. I am out of my mind excited. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be great. I really hope it's going to be everything I thought it's going to be. I have really high expectations for this movie, and I just really hope it can deliver. So, but even if it doesn't do everything I wanted it to do, I just hope it's still a good Spider Man movie. So, for the third and final part in my Spider-Man live-action Spider-Man movie retrospective, leading up to Spider-Man No Way Home, is the MCU Spider-Man movies. For now. So let's start with the first in this series. I thought Spider-Man Homecoming was awesome. Definitely one of the best Spidey movies to date. It was definitely the most lighthearted and fun Spider-Man movie, which I really liked, and it was clear that this was a new take as it was very different in style and tone from Maguire's and Garfield's films. I really liked Tom Holland's performance as Peter Parker, and it was amazing. I really liked that Peter was more youthful, and his quips were also great as Spider-Man. I thought the two Spider-Man suits in this movie, the Stark suit and the homemade suit, were some of the best on-screen Spidey suits we've had to date, and I really liked Michael Giacchino's score for the movie. Michael Keaton's Vulture was also amazing as an antagonist. I really liked that he was just a man who was screwed over by the rich and now he wants to protect his family no matter how many people he has to hurt to do so. He really reminded me of villains like Sandman from the Sam Raimi trilogy, and he was a perfect version of the character for me. I do think that Michael Keaton would have been great as Norman Osborn in the MCU, but he was an amazing Adrian Toomes nonetheless, and I'm really excited to see more of him in Morbius come this January. My favourite scenes in the movie were the Washington Monument scene, where the movie had really high stakes for Peter, and it was handled in such a great and dramatic way. And of course, the If This Be My Destiny moment. This moment translated one of my favourite comic book moments in history perfectly onto film. Tom Holland was excellent in the scene, and it really, really made me smile. The supporting cast, such as Aunt May, MJ, Ned, Happy, and Liz, were also great. The version of Aunt May was definitely better in this movie than in the sequel, which we'll get to in a minute. Um, and Liz was a pretty good love interest for the movie, and I pretty much bought Peter's crush on her for the most part. Ned and MJ were both also really good comic relief. Okay, on to the stuff I did not like about this movie. I didn't really like how some moments with the scenes could have had high stakes, where Peter could have stepped up and done it himself. Iron Man just came in to save the day. That's why I loved the moment with the rubble in the Washington Monument so much. Peter was independent and did stuff for himself and didn't need Iron Man to swoop in and save him. Something else that bothered me was how there wasn't much consequences for Peter's actions, and I know I sound like a high top films ripoff, but hear me out. When he destroyed the bodega, nobody was hurt, not even the cat. And when the boat split in half, everybody on that boat was fine. When Peter ditched the decathlon, he was immediately accepted back, and when Peter left Liz at the dance, she was barely even annoyed at him. Overall, I really liked Spider-Man Homecoming, and it's definitely one of the best movies in the MCU, so I'm going to give Spider-Man Homecoming a score of 83%. Alright, for starters, Tom Holland's performance as Spider-Man was excellent. He really embodies the character and makes it his own. I also think Jake Gyllenhaal delivered a great performance as Mysterio, who was a decent villain in the movie, and I really liked the red and black upgraded suit, and the action was great, and the illusion scenes were awesome, especially the CGI for the most part was really good. The supporting characters such as Ned, MJ, Happy, Betty, and Flash all worked well for what they were trying to accomplish, and also, I think this is one of the most fun Spider-Man movies we've had yet. Mysterio was an excellent antagonist, and the amount of times you thought he was going to feel bad for Peter, but immediately you saw the extent of his rage and how delusional he was becoming was amazing, and Jake Gyllenhaal's performance was epic. And not to forget that amazing mid-credit scene, which is the best one ever. For what I didn't like about the movie, at many times the writing was terrible. Peter tried to attack his own school bus and get a kid killed for taking a picture of him. In the scene on the bus, somehow nobody notices Peter literally jump out of the roof of the school bus. This is just stupid. This 16-year-old characters are written like 7-year-olds. Brad is kind of pointless and should have just been replaced with Flash. The Mysterio twist was obvious for anyone who's ever read, seen, played a single piece of Spider-Man media, despite the fact that I still did like him as a villain. It just was an obvious twist. The final fight has Beck in a mocap suit, and it kind of just feels anticlimactic. I feel like for the first ever time seeing Spider-Man versus Mysterio on the big screen, it should have been Spider-Man versus Mysterio instead of Spider-Man versus Jake Gyllenhaal in a mocap suit. Not to mention how they covered the beautiful practical suit in CGI, and it shows with the close-ups. Overall, this movie is a mixed bag, and it just depends on your tastes to enjoy it. Sadly, sometimes it's really bad for me, and sometimes it's not as bad. It is my least favorite Spider-Man movie, but that's not to say I don't like it. I do really enjoy this movie, but it's just not as good as the other ones in my opinion. So I'm going to give Spider-Man Far From Home a score of 68%.